I have Taiwo Udili here with me, partner with PwC. Is going to be looking at this and other issues surrounding, well, not the tax and the economy. Exactly, let me put it that way. Great to have you on the show.
My pleasure as always.
First, this improvement from FRS, what would you say is responsible for it? With this report, 1 trillion higher. That's really...
Yeah. So it's an improvement, and it's a combination of factors. I think 2 main reasons. Number one is the price of crude oil has been high and sustained in the region of 70, 75 for so many months. So the impact of that is what you're seeing, because the biggest increase that the FRS has been able to see in their collection is coming from the petroleum profit taxes that the oil companies would normally pay. The second big factor is the effort by the FRS to try and increase compliance. So we've seen higher collection from VAT and also from companies' income tax. That report about, having so many companies that do not even have tax identification numbers, and some with tax identification number, but they're not paying taxes. So those efforts are yielding some results. Part of it is also the money that they were able to collect from VATs. Yes. So all of this put together is the reason why you have the 1 trillion increase in tax collection so far compared to last year.
Before we go into efforts by this, I tend to wonder, why would one have an organization or run an organization and want to evade paying tax? I don't understand. Why does that happen in this part of the world?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's just about Nigeria. It's the fact that there are no consequences. See, it's not easy to pay taxes because it's difficult to make money, and then you don't want to part with it. So anywhere in the world, people would evade taxes if there are no consequences. So what has happened in Nigeria for so many years is because government was paying lip service to tax compliance and governance. One, people don't see a lot of the result of the taxes they pay. Therefore, they convince themselves that it is okay not to pay, especially when they can get away with it without paying. So that's the reason why you have those very embarrassing numbers of companies, according to the FRS, that are making billions of naira in turnover, but are not even registered to pay taxes.
Now we know that this administration, talking about diversification, tax is one of the ways we're really looking at. Let's get more people into the tax net. Let's do an appraisal of fiscal policy and tax administration so far under the Buhari-led administration. What would you say? How far have we gone? I know you play a very important role in some of all of these decisions. So tell us, how far have we really gone?
Yeah, I would say we have made some progress. If I break it down into different aspects of the tax environment, say in terms of tax policy, the former minister was able to put a committee together and looked at what should be the Nigerian tax policy. Actually, not Nigerian policy, national, because this covers both the federal, state and local governments. And I think that was a brilliant document. But then if you look at the other aspects, tax administration, some efforts have been made in the area of using technology to file returns and pay taxes. I know it's not working, perfectly well, but at least steps in the right direction. We also have a bit of coordination now between the federal government and state than before. But the third leg of it is what is really not very encouraging, and that's the legislative part. We haven't seen enough activities in terms of rewriting Nigerian tax laws so that they can be sensible for people who want to do business. It's almost like we are at a point where when you want to do business, you get punished by the law. Some of the issues that we're having to deal with, MTN, repatriation of this and that, I wish people can take a step back and say, what is really important to us? If you focus on ticking boxes and you make the business environment very difficult, you discourage investment. So did you bring in money to Nigeria? Yes. Did you make legitimate profit in Nigeria? Yes. You took the money out. Somebody said they gave approval in principle. It was not substantive approval. And then you make this big issue about it that the whole world is now talking about. What you say to the investing community is be careful when you're coming to Nigeria. Now, so we need to start looking at all of that. So that leg of the tax system hasn't really worked well, where we reform our tax laws to make them more fit for purpose.
Talking about attracting investment at this time is something that we cannot even ignore. I think 2 weeks back we had the report that the FPI is going back. People were moving funds even out of the capital market.
Absolutely.
Talking about, but now you mentioned the former minister. We really need to look at this. Any impact of our exit in some of all of these policies and some things she already instituted before she resigned last week?
Yeah, I hope there won't be any significant impact because really anything to do with governance, government policy should not be anchored on an individual. So because we now have the National Tax Policy Implementation Committee, I do hope that, the work of that committee would continue and in fact be enhanced to have more stakeholders' involvement. But there are other issues like the exchange of information, because she was very passionate about getting data from all over the world about what Nigerians have abroad. Have they paid taxes on this? She was key to the voluntary asset and income declaration scheme. We've signed a lot of agreements with the international community, including what we call the Common Reporting Standard, where banks across the world in different countries would exchange information with Nigeria. So I'm hoping that government will continue with those efforts so that whatever little gains we have made and potentially what more gains we can make would not be set back. I do hope that her exit would not have any negative impact.
Indeed. Now, we talked about encouraging investors to come in, and taxation comes in one way or the other. So how can we now make the tax policy, maybe encourage investors other than discourage them at this time when we really need these funds to come in?
Yeah, that's a very important point, actually. Most times policymakers, especially in Nigeria, don't think about the fact that tax in itself is the way you collect from the prosperity of businesses and individuals. So if people are not prosperous, there's no tax to pay. You can beat them up, you can threaten them, but there's nothing that is going to come out of it. So we have companies around the world who make more in 3 months than Nigeria's entire budget. The Googles, the Apples. Apple's GDP is now more than twice Nigeria's GDP at $1 trillion. So if you enable the business environment, not only would you create employment, you create prosperity that government can tax, and therefore there will be more money for government to spend to provide social services, and one thing leads to another, including infrastructure. So having said that, I think there's very little understanding in Nigeria that sometimes things we do like this, like the MTN issue and a few others, can send the wrong signal, even when you mean well. And you need to be mindful of that. You also find that many times in Nigeria, we think that when we are taxing companies, it's just okay. Say companies can pay, companies should pay this, 1% of this, 2% of that. The reality is that actually companies don't pay taxes, individuals do. Companies are just the vehicle that people use to do business. So whatever tax you impose on a company is going to be borne by either the shareholders, by way of lower returns on their investment. It will be borne by employees, either by way of reduction in salaries, or you lay them off. It would also sometimes could be borne by lenders because they cannot get appropriate interest on the money that they lend, even suppliers sometimes. So at the end of the day, you need to be careful and say, who is bearing the incidence of the tax that we impose? We also levy too many taxes on input and production. So somebody wants to do business, you say collect permit, you pay this and pay that. Raw materials are levied with VAT, with import duties, with all manner of taxes. Whereas what we should be doing is make it easy for people to just do business and tax them at the end, not at the point where they're trying to produce anything. My wife has a small business, and I was looking at it together with her the other time. And she employs about 15 staff. Okay. And we concluded that if we had taken the money that she used for the business and put in government bond, we would have made more money. That is totally tax-free. Of course, it will not create any employment, but we'll have peace of mind and more money in our pockets. Trying to create employment now, taxes from all manner of spaces, government, federal, government, state, local government, and plus the headache. You are wondering, does it even make sense to continue to do business? So I think those are some of the issues that Nigeria needs to look at very critically, especially the SME sector, because they are the biggest employers if we make them thrive. And
indeed, it will really ripple effect will come back to the economy. Jobs will be created.
Absolutely.
And all of that. Now, there was a recent order by FRS to freeze some accounts. What's your take on this, and what impact do you think it will have on the economy?
Yeah, on one hand, you know, we know that the tax compliance rate in Nigeria is very low, with a lot of evasion, and some people just with impunity not paying taxes. So I do, you know, commend the FRS for looking at the provisions of the law to say, let's enforce it. If it's in the law, you know, I believe that it should be enforced. However, I think that the FRS needs to be more diligent in the way they do it. We've had instances of, you know, accounts that were frozen in error. You know, when you freeze my account in error, it's not funny. And then you send them, you know, apology letters. That doesn't solve the problem. The damage is done already. So an FRS has to follow due process. Even if you think a company hasn't paid tax, you need to be sure that your data is correct. And once it's correct, give the company the time, according to the law, 30 days to respond to it. When they fail to respond, or they have responded and the assessment, as we say it, is final and conclusive, then you have the right to go to whoever has money that belongs to them, including banks, and substitute them to pay the money directly to government. Now, that following that process is extremely important. Okay. Without doing so, we make the business environment even more difficult.
That's a good one. Let's look at the season we find ourselves now. There's been bashing, as at last week, the stock market, I think on Thursday, was really bleeding, 3.46% down.
Loss, yeah.
You know, and it's been like that, even on the currency. And what do we, as we move to, even inflation?
Yes, it's going up now.
It's going up now. Let's look at these two issues. As we move to the election season, before we talk about maybe what we should expect from the political leaders, what is your take? Are we going to follow this trend till the elections?
Yeah, I'm afraid the answer is yes, the way I see it. And it's easy to predict the cycle in Nigeria. So when we're trying to do our election, we don't, even us, Nigerians who live in this country, we're not entirely confident that things will play out well. Because you see, politicians are too selfish. And so because they raise the uncertainty in the business environment and in the economy, what happens is foreign investors run to safety places, yeah? So they run out because of the uncertainty. The capital market, you know, the liquidity there is almost half foreign investment. So those guys have been selling and taking their money out. And because they are selling and taking their money out, there's pressure on the capital market, and that's why it's declining. The other impact is pressure on Naira, because they are then buying dollars with Naira to take out. So government really needs to continue to ensure that they can sustain the exchange rate. Inflation started going up since January 2017. It's been going down. Unfortunately, now it's beginning to trend up. But I hope that that will not go up significantly in the next few months, so that we can go back. But ultimately, we need to get to single digits. And that's really when you can say that we have inflation that you can manage, that does not stop development. In real terms, it means that the income that people earn, including the minimum wage of 18,000, is going down every single month once you have high inflation.
Yes, because even the NPC has been so rigid, saying that they maintain that rate, and we don't expect any shift, even as the rate now continues to go up. I don't think there can be any shift.
Yeah, because you see, when we thought that they had the opportunity to reduce the MPR, they did not do that. Now that inflation is beginning to go up, I can bet that the CBN will be reluctant to reduce the MPR. But really, when you want growth, you need to lower interest rates. If interest rate is high, it's difficult for anybody to borrow and do any genuine business that will create employment and GDP growth at 20%. What business would you be doing? What would you be manufacturing? What would you be selling? So there are difficult things to balance. I do acknowledge that. But policymakers must think about what is in the best interest of Nigeria and prioritize properly, such that we reduce this uncertainty and make Nigeria a more stable environment. Mr.
Taiwo Idele, partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers, thank you very much for joining us this Monday on the show. It's really nice to have you.
Thank you very much.